First, I want to welcome everyone for being here. Thank you for taking the time in your evening to share with us this workshop regarding exemptions and property taxes. This is being presented on behalf of the Northern Third Ward Implementation Project in conjunction with the Harris County Appraisal District. The Northern Third Ward Implementation Project is a community development initiative which was funded by the Wells Fargo Regional Foundation. It grew out of a successful participatory planning process, which was completed and identified over 75 community projects and programs. Some of those programs in which we're addressing would be neighborhood building, community economic development and workforce, education, families, children, and seniors. The implementation work is done by a steering committee of community stakeholders and residents who are participating and actualizing the vision and goals. The Housing Subcommittee has taken the initiative to bring this information to the community, to residents and stakeholders as it relates to tax exemption. We've worked over the last several months with Mabel Menifee to bring this together. And I would like to ask if Ms. Menifee, if you would introduce the presenters.
Certainly. Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Mr. Andrews. We're just working out a couple of technical details as we were coming on, so I apologize for that. But let me introduce who's going to be giving the presentations tonight. The Harris County Appraisal District, we're going to be talking about exemptions. We're going to have two presentations for you. We're going to be talking about exemptions, and we cannot go without talking about protests this time of year as well. So working with us tonight, I also want to thank the Harris County Tax Office, as representatives from there are going to also be talking with you. Elizabeth Doss, who is Deputy Director at the Harris County Tax Office, will be also providing a presentation. So with that, I just want to say good evening and to thank you all for joining us this evening to talk about property taxes. So, Mr. Andrews, are we ready to go?
Yes, we are.
All righty. So, as it was said, my name, I'm not sure.
We have your screen now.
My name is Mabel Menifee. And I'm a member of the Communication Services Division at the Harris County Appraisal District. To gather tonight with members of our exemptions and appraisal staff, as well as representatives from the Harris County Tax Office, we're going to spend the next 45, 50 minutes or so bringing you as much information as we can about how the property tax system works in Texas and in Harris County, and your rights and responsibilities as a taxpayer. That's information that is so important to know for all homeowners, and especially for homeowners in communities of color where property ownership often represents a significant portion of family and inherited wealth. We know how helpful this information can be, particularly this time of year, to property owners like you, with several key deadlines looming on the tax calendar. So by now, over 90%, way over 90% of residential property owners in Harris County have received their annual valuation notices that the appraisal district sends out each year. If you've received yours, maybe you're confused about your value, or you disagree with that value, or you just want more information about how it all works and what you can do to save money on your taxes. Our goal is to help guide you through that process. And tonight we're going to focus on exemptions and how they save you money. And we'll also talk about the protest process. Keep in mind that you have until May 15th to file your 2021 protest with HCAD. And if you have not received your valuation notice yet, you always have 30 days from the date of that notice to file the protest if you choose to do so. So in states like Texas, where there is no state income tax, property taxes provide the bulk of funding for local services, especially schools, also roads, police, and fire protection. I mentioned that the tax office is going to follow our presentation with one of their own. It's important that property owners understand the different roles our two agencies play. So tonight, you'll see how we represent the two sides of the same coin. HCAD, to the surprise of many, is not an agency or division of Harris County, but we're a subunit of the state government. We're the result of a law that was passed in 1982 by state legislators that established a central appraisal district in each of the 234 counties in Texas, and that oversight for us is provided by the state comptroller. So what we do prior to 1982, each taxing jurisdiction, and what I mean by jurisdictions are those entities that bill you for taxes, your school district, your county government, your city government, certain special districts or MUDs. Each of those jurisdictions did their own appraisals on property in the county, and they sent you a bill. Those bills could vary widely in terms of how much you were being assessed. So the state decided to establish a central appraisal role in district rather in each county. Our job is to assess and value the land and property and to provide that information to those jurisdictions. And that is what they use to base their taxes on. So now you only have one place to go protest, because before, if you disagreed or if it was wrong, you needed to go to each one of those jurisdictions to get it corrected. Our role, as I said, is to discover and establish the value of property parcels in each county. And for us, that is Harris County. We're the Harris County Appraisal District. Some counties in Texas will call it the Central Appraisal District, like the Dallas Central Appraisal District does. Once we establish that value, we certify it, and then we provide it to each of the taxing jurisdictions, which they then use to set their rates. We'll talk a little more about that later, but once that value is established, the tax assessor collector or the tax office in Harris County calculates the value, and they send out the bills. They're also the agency that you send your tax payments to, not to HCAD. That's important to know, because we don't, again, as I said, we don't assess or collect taxes. We establish the market value, we send out the value notices, we conduct the value hearings or protests, we administer the exemptions. And once that is done, we provide a certified tax roll for the county that by law must be done by a certain date on what we frequently call the annual tax calendar. We're the largest appraisal district in the state, as you can imagine, and the largest in the country, actually, that appraises all property on an annual basis. So you can imagine that's quite a challenge. We'll talk about the different ways that you can protest, how you can prepare for your protest hearings, and how exemptions can reduce the taxes that you pay, and how the tax office can assist you when you need more time to pay your taxes. Tonight, you'll be able to, as we go along, type in your questions on the chat box, into the chat box, because we're on Zoom. We don't have to interrupt the presentation to answer some of those questions, particularly if there's some clarification that you need. And we will we'll also be able to answer questions following both presentations, when we'll be able to open it up, and you can actually ask questions via audio if you like. Some of those questions, I might say, may involve specific issues with your personal account. So since this is a public forum, we'll probably in those cases take your contact information or ask that you contact us after the event or tomorrow, so that, because we may have to research that specific account in order to get an answer. Plus, we don't want you providing a lot of that information online publicly. Now that you have that rundown, we're gonna talk about we're going to get into HCAD's presentation rather. And I want to say that we're fortunate tonight to have 3 professionals working with us from HCAD. Cindy Oliveras is going to be who's one of our senior exemption specialists, will be able to answer questions in the chat box. She was also going to do the presentation, but we've had a little bit of technical difficulties, so I'm going to do that on her behalf, and she'll be able to clarify anything that I may not be able to, because exemptions in Harris County is really a very specialized role. We'll also have Danielle Torres, who is a senior valuation analyst for HCAD, as well as Raven Portis, another field supervisor in our appraisal department. And you're going to hear from about protests. You're going to hear from one of our senior residential property division supervisors, Alicia Bryan. So I know I've given you a lot there. I'm going to go ahead and get started on the first part. And once again, if you have any questions, feel free to type those into the chat. So can everyone see the slides? Okay.
Yes. Yes.
Great. And they're easy to see. Okay. So let's talk about just a little bit of background on central appraisal districts, which I mentioned HCAD serves Harris County. So again, appraisal districts are part of state government. Our role is to appraise all county residential, commercial, industrial, agricultural, and business personal property in the county of Harris, and we're to do so and we are required to do so at 100% of market value, and we do that as of January 1st of each year. We also manage exemptions and maintain records, as I mentioned before. And one of the most important things we do each year usually takes place in late summer or late July, and that is to certify the appraisal rolls so that and provide that to all of the taxing jurisdictions. In other words, we have said this is how much value you can expect from property in Harris County. Now you can go ahead and figure out your budgets for the coming year. So the next one, again, we keep the system fair because we're established as a subunit of government, and we're required to, again, appraise all property at market value. And you're going to hear those 2 words several times tonight: market value. You're also going to hear the words appraised value, and we're going to talk about the difference. And then we also, as a part of the property tax system, the appraisal review board is another piece that helps keep the system fair here in Texas now, because as you can imagine, when there were so many jurisdictions doing it, that might not have been the case. But the appraisal review board is a group of citizens just like you and me. They're homeowners or they live residents of Harris County, and they hear all the appeals. And then those individuals are the ones who make the decision in terms of whether or not to lower your value. So after that, we are going to talk about, next slide is just, I mentioned also about the tax calendar and some important dates. The date of January 1st is the date of appraisal. And just let me talk about that just a little bit. The appraisal date of January 1st, what that means is we value your home based on the condition that it was in on January 1st. So basically, you might have a fire on January 3rd and several rooms are severely damaged. That's not going to be reflected on that year's taxes. It may be reflected in the following year if those damages have not been repaired, but it's always going to be your house. Your value is always going to be based on the condition that it was in on the 1st of January. April 30th. That's one of the reasons we're here tonight, is because the exemption application deadline is coming up. And That means in terms of being able to make sure that your exemptions are reflected on your tax bill in the fall, April 30th is the deadline that we kind of put in there. It's a soft deadline, but it does make, but you will be guaranteed that those exemptions are going to be reflected on that year's tax bill when it comes out. You can still qualify for those exemptions that year as long as you do it within the year, but we can't guarantee that they're going to be reflected on your upcoming tax bill. So that's why we encourage everyone to make sure they file for those exemptions by April 30th for the year. The protest deadline, May 15th. So if you've already received your evaluation notice from HCAT, it means that you have until May 15th to file your protest. And then, of course, I talked about certification. And then in the fall, the tax bills are mailed out. And then, of course, on February 1st, if they have not been paid, they're delinquent. So just kind of, and because we do this annually, that's the schedule that has to be followed. And there are a lot of things that hinge on those dates being followed that take place behind the scenes. So just kind of wanted to give you an idea when we say, because of the deadline, why deadlines, in other words, are so important. So next we're going to talk about the annual value notice. The annual value notice, what we've been, another reason we're here. You've received that, and we're going to go over that a little bit more when Alicia's going to go over that a little bit more in terms of what those pages mean and what market value versus appraised value means. But for now, we're going to move on to exemptions. So what are they? Basically, they exclude part of your property value from taxation. So they reduce and they actually reduce to the appraised value before tax rates are applied. So what are they? What are some of the most common ones? The general resident homestead, the over 65 exemption, the over 55 surviving spouse exemption, disability, disabled veterans. There is now an exemption for the survivor of a first responder killed in the line of duty. There's also something called an airship exemption, which is a relatively new one. We're going to talk a little bit more about that. And let's continue. Let's talk about the general resident homestead exemption. It's the most common one. And it means that if you own and occupy a home as of January 1st as your primary residence, you are eligible for that exemption. You can apply and be granted that exemption. So that kind of includes that. One of the things that the general resident homestead exemption does is when property values are rising, going crazy like they kind of are now, you're going to be protected from not seeing more than a 10% increase in that value. What that means is that, say for instance, your home, let's take a home that's worth $100,000, and suddenly the value increases to $120,000. Well, your value can go no higher than $110,000 because of that 10% increase cap. The general resident homestead exemption also gives you by state law, a $25,000 school tax exemption. So that means that you don't pay for the first $25,000 on your property, and it's deducted from your school taxes. Let's go on to the next one, which is the over 65 and disability exemption. So the over 65 exemption, again, you can qualify for that for the entire year that you turn 65. So that's a great one to make sure you file for before the deadline, get it in for the year so that you can look at that much reduced tax bill that you're going to get in the at the end of the year. Elizabeth's going to talk a little bit more about that and show you some charts that'll show you just how much you can save there. So we'll move on to the disability exemption, which is similar to the over 65 that you can qualify for the entire year. You become eligible to receive disability benefits under the Federal Old Age Survivors and Disability Insurance Act. To kind of recap the benefits for both of those, the school tax, you also get a school tax ceiling or freeze. For the over 65, you also receive an additional $10,000 off of your school taxes, and you're eligible for tax deferrals and to pay taxes in installments to pay your taxes in installments without a penalty. So we're going to go into a little bit more about that. And in addition to those exemptions, certain tax jurisdictions offer additional benefits for over 65, which in Harris County recently increased. So we'll talk a little bit more about that. But I think a home up to $220,000 in Harris County is now exempt for anyone with an over 65 exemption. So let's go on to the next one, which is the over 55 surviving spouse exemption. And this is an important one for people to know because you qualify if your deceased spouse died in a year in which they were already eligible for the over 65 exemption. And say, for instance, your spouse passed away and you were 56. As long as you're over 55, you can continue with that specific exemption. You got to apply for it though. You'll receive all of those over 65 exemption benefits and continue to receive those if you do. You'll also continue to receive the school tax ceiling. The school tax ceiling is also something that's transferable should you move. You're also eligible for something called a tax deferral. And again, you can pay taxes in installments at the end of the year without penalties. So let's move on to the next exemption, which is other exemptions include a disabled veteran or survivors. And these are service-connected disabilities, which can be certified by the Veterans Administration or a successor. The 100% totally disabled veteran or survivors benefit. This is the rating at 100% disability compensation, and that veterans can also qualify for. There's a partially disabled veteran with a donated residence. Many of you are aware of several charities around the country who have been building donated homes for service members. Well, this allows them to maintain an exemption, a special exemption on those. And next, we have some additional exemptions that include the surviving spouse of a service member killed in action. They're able to maintain that as long as the first homestead of the surviving spouse and the surviving spouse remains unmarried. The same, similar for surviving spouse of a first responder killed in the line of duty. This is probably only about 3 or 4 years old. I think a couple of legislative sessions ago, this one was passed. And it allows for first responders who are so very important to their survivors to receive that benefit. So next, let's go on to the next one. So let's talk a little bit about the airship exemption. This one became effective in January of 2020. So it's relatively new. A lot of people may not know about it, but a lot of times, particularly in older neighborhoods where family members have lived and the original owner, say, passed away, and there's several heirs to the property. There may only be one heir living in the property, or there could be 2 or 3 heirs. And in the past, because there was no primary owner, those individuals were not able to take advantage of the homestead exemption or the over 65 exemption, or any exemptions for that matter, because, or if they were, and they could only take advantage of the piece, say there were 4 surviving heirs, they could only have 1/4 of the exemption. Under this new heirship exemption, one individual can apply for the apply to receive the exemption 100% of the exemption. And specifically, all that's really needed is it has to be an heir property, and you'll need to ask if there are, again, other heir property owners that occupy the property. And so in doing so, you'll need to provide an affidavit that establishes the ownership interest in the property. And you provide that to us. We have those on our website. A copy of the death certificate from the prior owner of the property, the person who passed away, and any citation or court record relating to the applicant's ownership of the property, if that is available. If it's not, we can work with you on that. But for those of you who may know of people in that situation, that's something that they would definitely want to see if they're eligible for it, to contact the appraisal district and contact our exemptions department to work with them. So next on the I didn't mention this one as I was running down all the other exemptions, because I wanted to bring it up. This is separately. This is another new exemption that the legislature passed during the last session, and it came out of Hurricane Harvey, but lo and behold, the first time we're going to be applying it is for Winter Storm Uri, which is not exactly what they expected to happen. On the Gulf Coast here, it's generally was meant for hurricanes and that sort of thing, where the physical damage to the property most likely was going to be obvious because it was going to be to the house on the outside. However, Winter Storm Uri is a little bit different, and I'm going to probably let Alicia talk about that a little bit more. But what it does allow you to do is, if you have at least 25% damage to your household, and it must be at least 25%, I'm sorry, not 25, 15% of your home was damaged, 15%, that's the threshold, then you can apply for a temporary exemption for your property because it was damaged by the disaster. For a lot of the average priced homes in Harris County, it's say a lot of them over 200,000, 250, 300,000. They may not qualify, but some of the older homes where the land value might actually be higher than the home itself, and you get your ceiling caved in because of the leaks or whatever, they may well qualify. So it's something we really want to stress, getting out into older, more mature communities, to understand that they have the opportunity to apply for this if they found themselves in that situation. The form is on our website. It is which is at www.hcat.org. We'll show that again later. And we ask that you mail it in. There is one thing that to be mindful of. The deadline, the statute sets out a certain number of days that you can apply for that. So the deadline for that is May 28th. So if you're going to file for that, anyone that is thinking about or may need to file for that, they must do so by May 28th. Let's go on to the next one, where we're going to talk about qualifications for exemptions. Very simple. You have to own and occupy the home. It must be your primary residence. You can't own a home up in Russ County or Fort Worth or Dallas and say and claim two. You can only claim one as your primary residence. So that's the first qualification. And you're also, when you apply for it, you must submit your driver's license or state issued ID card. And that card, the address on the card must match the address on the property. And finally, last but not least, exemptions are not granted automatically. So please don't assume that because you're turning over 65, we're going to automatically apply that over 65 exemption. Sometimes our records do reflect the person's age, and we can do that, but you can't depend on that. So make sure that you apply for that over 65, or make sure that you apply for that general homestead exemption when you become eligible. Next slide is going to be how to apply for an exemption, which is fairly simple. That application can be filed by mail or email or mobile app or online at www.hcad.org. And we have quite a few forms out there now that you'll find easy to fill out online, so that you don't have to print them out and return them. You can simply fill them out online and hit submit. Depending on when the application is submitted, the processing time could take longer. Remember, I mentioned about the deadlines that we have. Sometimes that's because once the exemption season is over, our staff is really busy doing some other things, and so they get to those not as quickly as you would like, but we will get to them. Once your exemptions have been applied to your account, you're going to receive notification of that. Generally, I'm going to say allow at least 6 to 8 weeks for those exemptions to be processed and applied to your account. A lot of times you can, even if you can't, if you haven't received the notice yet, you can go out online and check your account, and it's going to say, if you applied for the homestead exemption, it will say residential homestead. If you applied for the over 65, it's only going to say multiple under the exemptions column, because we can't really, by state law, we can't reveal a person's age. And by saying over 65, well, obviously, you don't want that out there for some of the predators that may be out there looking to take advantage of seniors. So you can also review, one thing you also can do with your, how do you know what your exemptions are? You can look on the back of your evaluation notice on page 2, and it's going to show you what those exemptions are that you currently have. So you can check that to make sure you're receiving all of them. Let's go on to the next slide, which is the HCAD mobile app for those of you who are techno savvy or know how to work a smartphone, probably a lot better than me. You can download the HCAD app and then and you'll be able to file your exemptions that way. You can just scan your driver's license both times and send that in, and it'll be taken care of. And couple of last things I wanted to get to on the next slide is the online homestead application. I mentioned you that some of our applications now are available online. The homestead application is one of it. You can apply for it on the mobile app. You can fill out this submit the fillable form, or you can just fill out one of the paper forms and send that in as well. And then finally, just want to remind you of the next slide, which is, one more, the annual confirmation card. This is something that many of you receive, that if you're a homeowner and you already have your homestead exemption, you usually get this card from us in December or early January, usually December. So what this card is just a confirmation that your homestead is continued, nothing has changed. And so once you get this card, you're good. Don't worry about it. It just means that we're continuing your exemption as it has been. If you don't get it, yeah, you might want to contact HCAD, because what happens is these are not forwarded. So if they're not, if the homeowner doesn't receive it, it's generally sent back to HCAD. Once it's sent back to us, we make several attempts to contact the homeowner. If we don't, to us, that signals that the circumstances have changed. The homeowner is no longer living there. And so therefore, that exemption will be removed. So rather than have to go through the trouble of resetting it, just make sure that, once you see that in the mail each year. And I want to show you our website at www.hcad.org. We've got a lot of helpful information on there. Like, for instance, you'll see where I mentioned where you can check on your exemption, whether it's been applied under property search. You go in and type in your address or your account number. Also down here toward the right-hand side is the forms menu, where you can click on it and then download a lot of just about any form that you need. And under contact us, you're going to see this one again, but if you want to just jot down this information again, the website is www.hcad.org. The email helpline, if you just want to drop us a line telling us what it is you need, is help@hcad.org. And then our general phone number is 713-957-7800. And we'll show this again. So with that, if you've got questions about exemptions, as I mentioned before, Cindy is in the chat room. We'll be more than happy to help you. At the end of the presentation, we can also talk about any other questions that you may have. For right now, we're going to move on to the protest piece of part of the workshop, and I'm going to turn that over to Alicia Bryant, who is one of our senior residential property division staff, who's going to talk to you about protests. So with that, take it away, Alicia.
Okay, can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Okay. And is everyone able to see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Quite a few of the slides that I'm going to go through were already presented by Ms. Menifee, and that's because we usually have one presentation for the protest, but they did want to focus on the exemptions for today. So if you see me skipping through slides, it's because we've already gone over those, or I'm going to go ahead and expound on some of the ones that she did speak about. So first, we're going to talk about appraisal districts. Give me just a second here. Okay, so we're going to be discussing, of course, CADs, what is the appraisal districts, the appraisals for this process, the valuation notices, which is something that Mabel spoke of, protesting your property value, and then we're going to hear from the Harris County Tax Assessor Collector's Office. Representatives from the Harris County Tax Assessor's Office are going to provide information to you on slides, on different slides as well. So, and sometimes when we talk about appraisal districts, we're talking about, or you may hear it pronounced as central or county appraisal districts, but in our case, we're talking about the Harris County Appraisal District. So what are the Central Appraisal District's responsibilities? It's often helpful to try to clear up some of the common misconceptions that we are a part of the local county government, which we're not. But CADs were established by state law back in 1979, and they provide one appraisal for all jurisdictions. And when Ms. Menifee was speaking, she did let you know that appraisals are coming from all of the jurisdictions, and then it's placed inside one notification, which is what we call our valuation notice, which most of you, or 90% of Harris County, has received. We do appraise properties at 100% of market value as of January the 1st of each year. We are comprised of about 34 municipalities, about 25 school districts, over 400 MUD districts or municipal utility districts, and about 1.8 million parcels. So we have quite a few homes in Harris County. Ms. Menifee did bring up these dates, and she focused on exemption applications when they're due, but our date of appraisal again is January the 1st. We are appraising your property or putting a value on your property as it was as of January the 1st. If for some reason you experience anything after January the 1st, that could even be the next day, January 2nd, as she mentioned before. You had a fire in your home is no longer standing by the time you do your protest in let's say you're doing your protest in July. But as of January the 1st, unfortunately, you had a standing home that was in okay condition, and that's what we're valuing. So that fire or damage to your home wouldn't apply for the current property protest season, but it will for next property protest season, as we value from January the 1st of one year to December 31st of that same year. So our valuation in this particular case ended on December 30th of 2020, December 31st, I'm sorry. So January 1st is our date of appraisal. April 30th, again, is the exemptions applications deadline. May 15th is your protest deadline unless you receive your notice later. If you receive your notice any later than May 15th, it's going to be due 30 days from that notice. So keep that in mind. If you haven't received it, it may just be because your property value has not been determined. But once you do receive it, you do have 30 days from that date to go ahead and set up a protest if you're not in agreement with the value. The tax bills are mailed out in October, and then again, they're delinquent on February 1st. Ms. Menifee did go over several of the exemptions, and once we get to the end here, if you guys have questions about the exemptions, if you're want to type those questions in the chat or wait until the end, I'm just going to skip through these slides because she did go over quite a few of these exemptions and she spoke on them thoroughly. But one that I wanted to focus on was the over 65 exemption. She mentioned that there was a exemption for someone being over 65, and a lot of people believe, or a lot of property owners come in that and say that when they turn 65, well, I shouldn't have taxes anymore. That's not the case. Your taxes for your school taxes, which is one of the largest exemptions that you receive, your school taxes are frozen. And that's what that means. When you turn 65, you have frozen school taxes, but of course you still have to pay the other taxes that are associated with your home. It's just that the school taxes at whatever time or whatever time you turn 65, those taxes are going to be frozen at that value. It's not that they're going away, they're just going to be frozen. Okay. As far as HCAD and our appraisals are concerned, we are required by the tax code to be at 100% of market value as of January the 1st. We do conduct our processes in mass appraisal. So quite a few property owners come in and say, well, hey, everyone on my street is valued at this amount with this same size house that I have. We don't value just houses on one street. We value houses within a neighborhood or within a market area and determine a value for, say for instance, your house is 1,800 square feet. We're not just going to value the 1,800 square foot homes on your property. I mean, on your street. We're going to value 1,800 square foot homes within your neighborhood or your market area to determine what we believe your value should be on your home. And a lot of that is based on what those properties are actually selling for. And again, value is derived and it's based on sales. So your protest deadline is located on your notice. As I mentioned before, the deadline for this year is May the 15th. And if you receive your notice after that date, please don't be alarmed. It's not that you're not going to be due May 15th like everyone else who's already received theirs. Yours is going to be due 30 days from the date of that letter. And you will have the actual due date or the deadline for you to notice or for you to have your property protest for your value on that letter. If for any reason you have issues or you're not able to find the information that you need on that letter that you receive in the mail, please give us a call at the phone number that was mentioned earlier. And I'm also going to show that once we get to the end of this presentation. So market value versus appraised value. When we talk about market value, this is the value at which your property would sell or a property would sell for to a willing buyer on an open market. So I can't come in and say, hey, I bought this property for $20,000 from my brother. That means it wasn't on the open market for anybody else to buy it for $20,000. So it's not an open market transaction. So that's not going to be considered being on the open market. It has to be available for someone else besides a relative or a friend to be able to purchase at that value as well. For appraised value, sometimes the appraised value may be the same as the market value, and it may be lower because of a 10% appraisal cap for properties which have homesteads. So you may get a 10% value cap for something that is your actual homestead. So you have to actually be living in the home. As Ms. Mabel mentioned before, you do have to live in that residence as of January the 1st. And you have to have been there for an entire year in order for the homestead exemptions to take effect. And if Cindy is there in the chat room, she'll be able to answer those questions about exemptions if you still have questions. This is another slide that's talking about exemptions. And then I want to zoom in here on the temporary disaster exemption, which is something that Ms. Menifee spoke of. When there's a disaster here in our county or any other county, that temporary disaster exemption is an exemption for damage to your property. We had quite a few property owners even last year, and we're probably going to get some this year, who believe that the pandemic has destroyed their property. Unfortunately, the pandemic did not do physical damage to properties. Storms like the Harvey storm, which was widespread here in Harris County and many other counties, and other storms like the tax day flood, those are types of damages or types of issues that may cause damage to your home. A fire is another type of damage, but for temporary disaster exemption, you would have to have had damage caused by usually an act of nature, not something like the pandemic. That doesn't qualify as a disaster or physical disaster to your home. For the protest, you do have a protest deadline, and that form is located on our website. You can also pick up copies of those forms if you go into our office, if you're not a person that works with the computer well. Everyone who receives a protest letter has a unique iFile number on the form. That number is only for your account. So you couldn't use that iFile number to look up somebody else's account. Everyone's is different. The deadline again is May the 15th. As said before, you're going to hear that date a lot because May 15th is the deadline for those of you who have received your property evaluation notices. And if you have not, 30 days from that date will be when your protest deadline is for you to apply for your, if you decide to apply for one. And all of this applies to market value. This applies to the value that you think your house would have sold for or would sell for as of what condition it was in as of January the 1st. We have different methods for you to be able to protest. One of them is the I file method and the I settle method. Both of those are actually online. We also have where you can, this is new from last year and as of when the pandemic started, we have where property owners can actually do their property protest speaking with someone over the phone via the internet or virtually. And the process works, the way that it works is you still fill out your form, whether you're going to fill it out online or with a paper form, and you have the option to go ahead and do that virtually. So on the day of your protest, someone's going to, on the day that you're supposed to have your protest, someone will give you a call and let you know, or you get an email and they'll let you know that your protest time is at a certain time between a certain window. You have within that window, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, and Cindy might be able to help with that, or maybe Danielle or Raven, you have a couple of hours within that window. You have that time to contact us and let us know, well, yes, I'm ready to do my protest, or no, I'd like to reschedule. But if you miss your check-in window, you may lose the opportunity to do the informal protest. The next type of protest that you would be able to do if you happen to miss your informal hearing, or if you decide that you don't agree with the value at your informal hearing, is a hearing with the appraisal review board. Those can be done remotely as well. And we did, again, acquire that option, or give property owners that option on last year. If they decided they didn't want to come in, but they still wanted to be able to present their evidence, they can present that information via a virtual call. Let's skip the slide. Okay. The unique I-file number that I was speaking of a couple of slides ago is located here in the yellow area. It's been highlighted. This is just a sample, but this I-file number is unique to your account. Whenever you set up the information online, and sometimes property owners come in, or if they have someone representing them, they want to know what we use to value their property. Well, 14 days before your hearing is going to take place, if you go in and set up an account and enter this I-file number, you should be able to see everything that we're going to use as far as how we value your property. Our information is usually based on sales, but if you come in and maybe there are some sales that we don't have, because in Texas, you don't have to provide that information, but maybe we have sales that we use and you have some better sales that you want to use, but they have to actually be sales and they have to be within the valuation period. They can't be sales that happened after January the 1st, because again, as mentioned several times before, the date that we have for valuation, or that where we stop for valuation, is January the 1st. And it is, it could happen that the home values did go down after January 1st, and maybe they even went up. But as of January the 1st, the value was placed on your home based on the information that we had prior to that. So what should I bring when I want to protest my property value? Some relevant documents include a current sale of your property. We call your property the subject property. current sales of similar properties, as I mentioned before. And you may even have pictures of the condition of your property. And if you can remember when I was speaking before, I did say that we do mass appraisal. So all of the information that we have is either based on sales or based on what a home like yours is going to, what we think a home like yours is going to sell for. But your particular home may have had some unrepaired damages before January the 1st. You may come in and show us pictures of the interior of your home where you've had some issues with termites or some issues with some flooding inside or some leaking roof issues that you've had inside your home. We wouldn't know that if you didn't come in and tell us. So we always recommend that if you do think that your value should be lower, that you come in with a reason why your property should be lower than anyone else that was done in this mass appraisal format. And you can even bring in repair estimates. Well, I do have some issues going on with my roof. I do need a new roof. And I did receive some estimates, and this is how much they believe it's going to cost for me to get a new roof or to get my roof repaired. And you bring that information in, and we will consider that information when we're making a determination for the valuation of your property. That makes your property a little different from someone else's when we do it this way in mass appraisal. And these are some of the things that you will see in that information that I told you that would be available to you about 2 weeks before your protest date. You may see sales in your immediate neighborhood that we have. You may see sales in surrounding neighborhoods that we have. We're also going to be able to show you some interactive maps, which put nearby sales into perspective for you. And then some additional points of important property data. This next slide shows you what you may see when we're going through information when we look up or when we put a value on your property. Some of this information is blocked out because this is someone's actual information for their home back in 2018. But we have here the different neighborhoods that we found sales in as they relate to this particular property in this case. And we would go through here and the system makes a determination based on the sales in the area or in the market area for your neighborhood. And that's how we come up with the value of what we think your house will sell for. Some of the things that we ask, if you decide that you go through an informal hearing and informal meeting and you decide, well, hey, I don't agree with my value. I think my value should be a little bit lower than that. We recommend that you go to the appraisal review board. And as mentioned before in Mabel's presentation, she did tell you that the appraisal review board is a group of citizens just like you and I who may own properties in Harris County, and they're going to make a determination based on the presentation that's made by the appraiser and your presentation. And we ask that you come prepared. There are 3 members of the appraisal review board, and we'll see on upcoming slides. There's an appraiser, and then there's you in those boardrooms. And we ask that you organize your evidence in the same order as you want to make your points. And when you bring the evidence in, we're asking that you bring 4 to 5 copies, one for yourself if you need that information to explain your point. And also the appraiser is going to keep that information. If they make a determination, they're going to keep that information, and that information is going to be placed into your record. And for the appraisal review board, they're going to be reviewing the information as you are going through that information. So it's best that everyone has their own copy so that everyone can follow along while you're speaking. This is a picture of what one of the boardrooms looks like. As I mentioned before, the gentleman over to your left is the appraiser. The 3 individuals on the other side of the table are those are the appraisal review board members. And then the gentleman over to the right is the property owner in this case. If someone's representing you, like in one of the other, like you may have a relative or someone representing you, that person will be sitting on the side of the table where the the property owner is in this case. But this is a picture of what one of our boardrooms looks like. And this was pre-pandemic, so you see that they're sitting kind of close, but they're a little different now because of the pandemic. So some qualifications. For your exemptions, you must own and occupy your home as your primary residence as of January the 1st. You must provide a driver's license or ID with the address of the property. You must apply for those exemptions because they are not automatically granted. This information here, again, and I'll leave it on the screen. This information is how you can get in contact with us. The address there is 13013 Northwest Freeway. Our website, where you can find a lot of this information that we just went over, explaining how the protest process works. And if you've ever gone on our website, this would even tell you if appraisers are in your neighborhood. A lot of things are happening here in Harris County, and a lot of property owners want to know, well, why is this person here in my neighborhood? If you actually go on our website, it'll tell you that we have appraisers working in this area, working in this area, working in that area, and they should all have decals on their cars letting you know that they work for the appraisal district. They're going to have badges. They're also going to have jackets, or a jacket or a vest, depending on what season it is, and that everything that they're supposed to have should be available for you to see to make you feel more comfortable when someone's coming and knocking on your door. We do have an email address at help@hcad.org if you just want to send your information in and don't have time to email it. And then our general phone number is 713-957-7800. And we have live individuals between the hours of 8 and 5 who can answer questions for you. And that ends my presentation.
Thank you, Alicia.
You're welcome.
Questions that were in the chat. I don't know if Erica's going to take those up, or do we need to read them out and share that?
We're gonna actually go first, if we can, to the county's presentation at Elizabeth, and then we'll be able to, she'll be able to clear up some of those questions, and then we'll be able to answer anything that's left.
Thank you.
Hello, can everybody hear me? This is Elizabeth with the Harris County Tax Office.
Yes.
Okay, good. Just want to make sure you guys can hear me. I'm going to go briefly over lots of the exemption tabs, because I know we've had 2 speakers on those, but I'm just going to really hone in on how those impact your tax bill, because that's the important part, is how we're saving you money. Just briefly on this front slide, I just want to bring everybody's attention to where I work. What do we do? My name is Elizabeth Doss, and I'm with Ann Harris Bennett. She's the Harris County Tax Assessor Office here for Harris County, and we collect for only 77 jurisdictions of all roughly 400 and so of them in Harris County. However, we do collect for a lot of the large ones, and that would be City of Houston, Houston ISD, Houston Community College, Harris County jurisdictions, several school districts, a dozen or so cities, and all kinds of emergency service districts and such. So there could be a good chance that those of you guys that live in City of Houston, we obviously will be your only tax assessor, and you might be only having one bill. But if you live outside of Houston ISD, there's a good chance you're going to get a school bill from either maybe Goleta Park or Spring or other school districts. So I wanted to make sure everybody's aware of where your tax bills are actually coming, because we want to make sure you get them and pay for them all. Okay, this is the important part. This kind of ties it all together in a nice little chart of who does what. They talked about all of the fun stuff the appraisal district does, and they're the first part of this slide, the first bullet of this slide, where it says taxable value. And they went over all of the information that goes into is appraising at market value, getting your exemptions granted, and all of that information goes into calculating your taxable value. Once that's done, all usually late summer, Those values go over to the taxing jurisdictions via their tax offices. And what we do at the tax office is help jurisdictions calculate their effective tax rate, their no new revenue rate. There's all kinds of new words, but it's basically called truth in taxation. And we help those jurisdictions calculate last year's values and using this year's values and help them set a tax rate that then can cover their budget for the upcoming year. So that's where the taxable value comes from the appraisal district. The tax rate comes from each taxing jurisdiction. Each jurisdiction adopts their own tax rates and their own exemptions. And we get all of that information both from the appraisal district and the taxing jurisdictions, which would be, Harris County Commissioners Court, City of Houston Council. Then we take all of that and its value times your rate equals your tax bill. And that's kind of where we all fit in this piece. Is the tax office is one of the three groups basically that helps the tax bills get in the mail with the taxing jurisdictions and such. Understanding your tax bill real briefly. Everybody who gets a tax bill, generally they're all by tax code, so they have the same thing. But what's kind of is unique about our tax bill, and our tax bills coming to you in the mail, is we have a red border in our seal, so it's from the Harris County Tax Office. We include the Harris County account number, so that will flow from the appraisal district to us. It's got all the taxing jurisdictions that we collect on that bill to make sure all of them are there in case you're not looking for another bill. It's got your values minus your exemptions, your tax rate equals your tax bill. And then I'm going to go over a couple of occasions why those would not be correct, where your value times your rate doesn't equal your bill, and it's called a tax ceiling. So we'll go over that real quick. So the other part of our tax bill is the coupon at the bottom. That's the very important part if you are going to pay your taxes in the mail, is to be sure to rip off that bottom part and put it in together, so that makes sure your check gets applied timely to your property account. The next slide we have is, this is the important one. All of that talk about homestead exemptions and over 65 exemptions, really what is the effect on your tax bill? And what we did on this one slide was take an average home value in Harris County, and last year for the 2020 tax year, it was $177,000 is an average home value in Harris County. So we took that average home value and we took a piece of property that's in the City of Houston, HISD, Houston Community College, in the county jurisdictions, and we calculated it just straight out bill. And you can see without a homestead, that property is roughly spending almost $4,500 yearly in taxes. And then we went in, and let's say you got a homestead, you lived there January 1, you got your application in, your driver's license all matched. And you can see the additional savings just for that one exemption application, and you're $1,200 of savings for that year. At any time you don't get your application in timely and the tax bills go in the mail and you pay, and then the exemption comes later, it's an automatic refund to the property owner. So that's going to happen. And what it is on these jurisdictions, and you can, as jurisdictions adopt different exemptions, it's a different savings. So if you lived in a school district that didn't have a 20% homestead like Houston ISD does, it wouldn't be as high a savings. So this depends on the value of your home and the exemptions for each taxing jurisdiction. Now let's move over to the over 65 one, because that's really an amazing savings. Harris County Commissioners Courts over the years have increased those over 65 exemptions as values go up, because they want to make sure property owners that are over 65 on those standard income, once you retire, they want you to be able to, afford your home. So commissioners last year actually increased their over 65 exemption from $164,000 to the $229,000 exemption. So what that means is, if your property is under the $229,000, and if you're over 65 or disabled, you're not paying taxes to Harris County. So you'll hear sometimes people say, well, I don't pay taxes and I'm over 65. Well, and as you know, or you probably have heard through this presentation, is it's not because how old you are, it's how much value your property is and when you turned over 65. Because if your home value was lower than the exemptions at the time you turned over 65, that's probably why you're not paying taxes to that jurisdiction. So for Harris County, a lot of folks who do turn over 65 are under this $229,000 in value are not paying Harris County flood, port, and hospital. but they are probably maybe paying some to the city of Houston, because the city of Houston does have the $160,000 value. Houston Community College is like 90,000 the last I looked. So there are different exemptions. So you could pay different exemptions to different taxing jurisdictions. Now, school districts, historically, the state doesn't allow them, because they're an extension of the state, to have those high over 65 exemptions, but they do have something better, or as well, is the tax ceiling. So you heard the other ladies talk about what a tax ceiling is. I'm just going to go over to the plain fact is you have $1,000 tax bill for Houston ISD the year you turn over 65. And what the legislature has done is that's going to be the highest dollar amount you're going to pay Houston ISD is that $1,000. So if your value goes down the next year, your tax bill could go down and you would pay less. However, once that value or the rate goes up, you will never go over that $1,000 unless you build in a swimming pool, add on to your house. But if you just maintain your house, it's always going to be that $1,000. And that helps you when you get on that fixed income to know that the highest part of your tax bill is going to stay frozen, if you will, or there's a tax ceiling. So that's what that means when you hear someone says, oh, my taxes are frozen. It's your school taxes are mandated by the legislature to do so. So the next one we have is the tax deferral. And briefly on this one, we just kind of explain it as an insurance policy. When you turn over 65, I would go ahead and you fill out your over 65 exemption application. I would go ahead and fill out a tax deferral. Even though you're always planning on and you have the ability to pay your taxes, it's always a good idea to go ahead and fill out that application. Because at any moment, you never know when you drop your bill in the mail on January 31st, if it doesn't get postmarked, the rest of us who are not over 65 or disabled have to pay a 7% penalty on 1 day late. If your tax deferral, what a deferral does, it's only a 5% for the entire year. So if you're late by a couple of days, it's very minimal interest rate due. So that's why, I mean, it's just like an insurance policy. If you have every intention of paying your taxes, please, by all means, do so. However, if you're late one time, it's going to immediately save you lots of money. But two, if there's ever some reason, health, whatever the situation is, the value keeps going higher and you can't afford your taxes, the legislature put this in so people who are on those fixed income are able to stay in their home. And what this tax deferral does is it defers your payments until you sell your property or you pass away. And then they are then still calculated that low rate for another 180 days. And after that, it does go back up to regular penalty and interest going forward. However, that whole time your deferral, it's just that 5%. It's not compounded. It's once a year. It's a very low savings of interest. So if there's a question of you wanting to stay in your property and you're not able to stay in there because of the taxes, this is what the legislature is having so you can stay in your property. Now, if you ever start taking advantage of a tax deferral, it's a good idea to let your children know, your heirs, because maybe they want to start helping you pay it. So then when you do pass away, they don't have to then pay all of it at one time. But it's something out there for you to talk about. We're happy to ask any questions about tax deferral, but I just want you to know if you need it to take advantage of it, it's there. Payment plans. This is what we're doing a lot this time of year. Once property taxes go past due, we got a lot of different payment plans. But for one more thing, we're going to go over the over 65 quarter pay is what we call it here. It's the 1/4 quarter pay is what we call it. However, what it is for anybody who's over 65 or disabled is able to take that bill that we send out in the fall and divide it in 4. And as long as you make your first payment by January, you then skip a month. So then you would pay it by March, May, and July. And it helps you when you're on that fixed income to make your taxes in 4 equal installments. So that is what we call the quarter pay. So those are for the over 65 and disabled. The other two I show on the screen are what in the property code is. It allows us to do payment plans for any past due taxes. With all the pandemic and the loss of jobs, there are so many people who are and are taking advantage of these payment plans that are offered by the legislature. There are 2 kinds. The legislature laid out for a lower interest. Well, it has interest rate, but lower penalty accrual if it's your resident homestead. But what Ms. Bennett also offers is payment plans for outside of resident homesteads, because the tax code allows us to do payment plans for all properties. So she wants to be sure to let any kind of property owner. So if you have a business, you have rental property, and if you're having a hard time making those taxes, we really really want you to give us a call and let us help you get into a payment plan. It helps you get on target to get those taken care of and really be prepared for the next tax year that's always coming around the corner, to really help you keep your property and get a handle on what's going on. So a lot of these payment plans, both of them, what they're going to do is save you an attorney's fees. In the tax code, if you're not into a payment plan or you haven't paid your taxes in full by July 1, the tax offices have to turn your accounts over to delinquent attorneys to collect those. So what we really want to do is get you into a payment plan before July 1. It helps you understand where you are and get through that, but it also saves you considerable amount of attorney's fees. So if you do know anybody or yourself has any past due taxes, please give us a call. You can go onto our website and request a payment plan, and we can mail it to you or email it to you. And what we could do is give you a 12-month, a 24-month, a 36-month, because what happens is if you have several years due, you might need a longer payment plan just so it helps you stay into your budget as well as save for a current year taxes that's coming up. So just know we have those extended payment plans if you need them. Prepayments, I know a lot of people are already trying to get ahead of their 2021 taxes that we won't bill until the fall, but there are people already taking advantage of that and going ahead and make monthly payments to our office. We apply it to an escrow account on your account. And once those bills come due in the fall, we take all that escrow, apply it to that account. If there's any remaining due, we go ahead and send you a new bill. And if there's any overages, we'll go ahead and get you a refund application out there. Ways to pay, you know, Ms. Bennett always says is, yes, I'm the tax assessor. My job is to collect taxes, but you know what? I want to try to do it as efficient as I can for property owners and make it as convenient as we can. You can pay online at our website. You can pay by credit card, which does have a 2.35% because that dollar amount goes to the credit card companies. However, e-check is free. So if you ever were going to write a check to the tax office, you can go online and that e-check option is free. As well as on the telephone, it's the same. Credit card or e-check is free. By mail, I know most people do by mail, but I just want to give you guys a clue about the mail. Is post offices generally on January 31st, you go put your post office, you drop your envelope in the blue box outside, that it's not getting opened up that night and getting postmarked. And by the tax code, we're required to either have it delivered to our office or postmarked by January 31st to be on time. So I always want to give everybody a heads up. If you're planning on going the last minute to drop your check in the mail, please go into the post office and get it hand canceled. We scan every envelope. And every year I have lots of phone calls with property owners who we have to assess that penalty and interest for February because their payments were late because of the postmark. And it is unfortunate, but we cannot do anything about it. It's the tax code. So I always, every time I'm talking to people is if you're going to drop it in the mail, please either do it a few days in advance if you don't want to go into the post office, or be sure to go in and get it hand canceled. Also, by our branches are all open now. We still do appointments. However, if that is more convenient for you to know what time you can go in. Property tax isn't busy this time of year, so you could our branches are open, or if you want to get an appointment to get a branch close to you, we're available for that. Important dates, just like the appraisal district tax code, there's always an important date. Ours very much is the January 31st. And if you don't get those taxes taken care of by then, please get into a payment plan with us before the July 1 date, before we have to turn over to the delinquent attorneys, because we really could save you some money on that. Okay, here we are. We have auto services because, as everybody knows, Ms. Bennett is the auto registrar, because we can help you get your auto sticker for your registration as well as your property taxes. And our phone number is there at the 713-274-8000. And that is my presentation. I know there's been a lot of information, so we're going to be available now to answer any questions we can. Does somebody want to ask questions from the chat? Mabel, did you want to have any questions in the chat we need to go over?
I don't see any, but if there's, I think they were all answered about VA exemptions, etc. But I don't know. Does anybody, if you want to unmute and anybody has any questions to ask, we're still here and happy to answer those. And if not, Mr. Andrews, do you want to take it over? Take it back?
Thank you. Thank you. I want to say appreciate all of this. I think this is more information than I could digest in one setting, but I certainly will be using the phone number and the hcad.org, especially to download those forms. Those are excellent forms that can be used both online and through the mail. So we appreciate the help and assistance from the appraisal district and the personnel from the tax office. I think it's been a great opportunity for us to educate ourselves on how we can save money, and everybody wants to save money. We also have at this time a recognition by DeMarcus Foster regarding utility assistance. DeMarcus, tell us what's that about and how you're going to move forward with that.
Thank you, Theodore. Hello, everyone. Of course, on our flyer, the Northern Third Award, we offered up to $200 in utility assistance for one special resident who registered, as long as you lived in the 77004 zip code. So we're going to just reveal who that winner is right now. If the person is not still on the call, we'll just spin one more time until we have a winner that's here on the call. So I'll share my screen. Okay. My Shelby, do we have my Shelby on the call? If you are on the call, please speak up. I'll give you.
Hello, yes, Maya Shelby is on the call.
Maya Shelby. Okay, you have won. We will be contacting you via the chat. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you.
Congratulations. And I think that was our last presentation, was the winner of the utility assistance. Again, thank you to everybody. This has been a wonderful presentation and workshop, and everyone have a good night.
Thank you.